Okay, hello, this is wmpyr back again, once again with Mr. Pedro,
Hey, what's up, everybody?
and we are going to be talking about just martial arts in general, martial arts talk, and you have some interesting topics for us to kind of like tackle.
Yeah, there's a couple of things on my mind, and some things I think the viewers will find interesting, and I'd like to hear their input as well in the comments.
Nice.
Um, so, one thing off the top of my head, man, I know that you trained in capoeira
A little bit, tiny bit.
a little bit.
Yes, sir.
So when most of us think of capoeira, we think about the dancing, the movement, the acrobatic kicks. Um, but yet, there's a component to capoeira, a self-defense component, and I've seen a little bit of it, and you don't see a whole lot of the typical capoeira acrobatic big kicks. You see more like close quarters, headbutting, more elbowing, uh, short range kicks, low kicks. And so, I'm wondering, are they just two opposite worlds, or do they kind of coexist, commingle, or are there maybe some schools that focus on like the typical capoeira, and maybe some that might do a little more self defense? What's been your experience with that?
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's an excellent topic. Back in the day, I have to admit that I did not think capoeira was that practical. I I don't think that anymore. But back then, with my ignorance and being naive, I thought it's not practical. But I said to myself, I was becoming very close-minded because I only wanted to practice styles that I thought were practical. So I said to myself, dude, can't you just do martial arts and train for fun? If you can't do that, then you have some serious mental problems. So just go have fun. Pick the style that is like the most impractical style that you think and go have fun. And if you can't do that, then there's something wrong with you. So I picked capoeira. I went to a school and I remember it was fun. The instructor was nice and everything. But then I went to another school later, like years later. I went to another school and that instructor was very different. Like the first instructor was like, okay, we're playing the music, we're all here to have fun, no one's going to get hurt, like that. But then this next school I went to, the instructor, just looking at the guy, he looked like he's from the streets. Like, did you see that movie Only the Strong?
Um,
No, you never saw that. Well, when they talk about like capoeira is from the streets of like Brazil, the streets of Rio. I mean, and these are supposed to be rough streets over there. So these dudes train out there, right? They're openly displaying martial arts out there. You could imagine people could just walk up and challenge them, make fun of them or whatever. So they get into street fights left and right. This dude looked like one of those guys that he would constantly be in street fights. He looked like a street fighter. And he's the guy that said to me, like, you have to protect your head at all times. He was the guy that did that. At the first school, we didn't. It wasn't like that at all. Um,
mhm.
and then another school I went to, um, I remember in class, so we all like form that circle and people go in and they start exchanging moves. So it's not sparring, but you're moving with the other person. Um, so this girl that she was from Brazil, she saw my movement and then she said to me like, you can't put an open palm on the ground. You have to put your fist there. And I was like, why? And she's like, if you have your hands open on the ground, they're going to step on your fingers deliberately and break your
Mm.
fingers. So I was like, whoa, that's some nasty stuff. So she was trying to protect me. And so she was trying to give me like street advice. So just from that experience alone, those experiences tells me that you were wondering if there's an integration. So sometimes there's some nasty guys that show up, and they are capoeira guys. They are capoeira people, and but they play a little differently. And with those guys, they're gonna have techniques like that to hurt you.
Wow. Yeah, because maybe it's just like a Western or an American sort of perception of capoeira. Have fun, dance, rhythm, hippie-ish, whatever. But that's some brutal stuff in there.
I think,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
oh no, sorry, go ahead.
No, no. And if you watch the first UFC, which was the Gracie family came in and all that, and a lot of those fighters were saying about the Brazilians and the Gracie family, they got the impression that those guys are just they're street fighters.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were saying about Brazil is it's a country of street fighters, that it comes natural for them.
Right, makes sense. I mean, you know, yeah. I mean, like you said, you're practicing in the street. Guys come up to you, what are you guys doing? Blah blah blah. So I think if you're doing capoeira in Brazil, you got to get tough quick.
I think so. Definitely. Definitely.
Um, that's pretty interesting. So I wonder if we'll see more of like the self defense side in the future from capoeira, or is it still mainly going to be the playing, the circle?
I don't know, because like in order for it to spread though, it
Mhm.
it kind of needs to be more nice, right?
Right, right, totally.
Yeah. So then the ones that are mean, they get a reputation, and then people are like, don't go to that school. Those guys are nasty. But those are the guys that can fight.
Yeah, yeah. It's always a tricky balancing act between I'm going to give you some street effective, get you tough. You'll survive a street confrontation, or then like you don't want to scare the people away neither,
It, it,
type thing.
that exists in like all styles, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned about placing the palm on the ground and people could stomp you.
Right.
That's an exposed limb, and that brings me to something else that I've been thinking about: combat sports and the gloves in combat sports. So back in the day, boxing used to be bare knuckle. Look at the late 1800s. You see guys like John L. Sullivan, Gentleman Jim Corbett. Those old guys, they had that guard,
Right.
right? And they would punch vertically, right? This way. You see the picture, and sometimes they'd even drop the hand as they're punching the other way. And then they'd use longer guard and blocks this way, this way. It looks almost like karate or Wing Chun. Gloves get introduced, right? You look at Jack Johnson, Jack Dempsey. Even those guys, you still see this kind of long guard, kind of circular rhythm. But then over time, the guard starts coming here. They start throwing horizontal strikes. They start covering more. Fast forward now to present day, there's bare knuckle boxing leagues
Yes.
popping up again.
Yes.
But what we've seen so far is they fight in the modern conventional boxing way with gloves, but only bare knuckle. I wonder if people are going to return to the old method of this bare knuckle boxing, if bare knuckle continues, or is this modern day, this style of boxing superior to the old? Or does it translate to both well? What do you think about that?
It's very interesting, very very interesting subject. But my first concern, right? The first thing I want to say is that um, the reason why we put on the gloves, and a lot of people might misunderstand that, is you put on the gloves so that you don't hurt the guy, and it's like, no, right? You put on the gloves, and now you can hit really hard,
Real hard.
real
Yeah.
hard, right? So it's actually to protect your hand.
Hmm.
And yes, it's not so much bleeding, right? Because with the knuckles, it could bleed a lot easier. But so superficial wounds that it's not going to knock the guy out, but it's going to make the fight a lot nastier, and it's going to give him permanent scars and stuff. So to stop that, wearing the glove. But the main thing that the glove does is you can now blast, right? Okay, so when you go to bare knuckle, and that's like you said, there's modern bare knuckles. Why aren't these guys breaking their hands? Because I
Mm.
thought that's the first thing we would see is when they go bare knuckle, and these guys are MMA fighters and they're used to fighting with gloves on. Now they're all gonna break their hands. What do you think about that? Are they breaking their hands first of all, or not, or what's going on? Did
I
they have
think
to
I,
change?
I think I've only seen it a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
That people might have breaking their hands. Um, I think people are gonna keep the modern style, but we're gonna see more hand conditioning, hitting like makiwara type stuff, hitting the punching bag, knuckle push-ups, etc. And I think too, what we're gonna see too is maybe more open hand strikes,
Okay.
even in the bare knuckle boxing, because there's gonna come a point where somebody does this and then they hit up here and they hurt. And they're like, okay, well now I have to slap or hook,
Right.
hook the ear or what have you.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think we're gonna see more hands breaking. I think.
I think the fighters are told like to punch with like 60%, not 100%.
Yeah,
But
but
even
even then,
then, yeah, it's hard to when you're used to, right?
well, too, somebody will defend the body and you'll hit them in the elbow and you know hurt your hand that way, or you'll hit somebody's skull. I mean, maybe even hand on hand. Who knows? But uh, yeah, there's going to be plenty of injuries, and like you said, there's going to be people punching less powerfully, and I think going to open hands. Because another thing to remember too is the old bare knuckle boxing. They used to be able to throw kicks too.
Mm-hmm.
Throws like I think it was only after the Marquis of Queensberry rules that it was mainly fists.
Yes.
But before that, it was I think like elbows, kicks, throwing, punching. So they probably we don't know, but they probably weren't breaking their hands as much or hurting them. They had all their other tools. But I think in modern bare knuckle, where it's mainly just the fist, I think we're going to see more broken hands, hand injuries. And and speaking of that, um, there's the debate between vertical and horizontal fist.
Yes.
A lot of people favor a vertical fist for bare knuckle fighting because they talk about the bone alignment, the radial and the ulna, and the wrist, and hitting with these three knuckles instead of these two. And they talk about how there's kind of some twisting and kind of misalignment when you punch horizontally. Do you think we're going to see that? Maybe more people experimenting with vertical?
I actually saw a boxing video where the coach was saying he was telling his student, his fighter, to punch with a vertical fist.
Mm.
And this is pure box. The guy was going to compete and everything. So this is 100% pure boxing. And I was like, wow. The guy was like, no, we don't do that. Now, so then the question is, what's the difference between vertical fist and horizontal fist? And one thing I kind of thought about is, and Bruce Lee kind of mentions, he says this is, do you think like when you're doing a turning horizontal fist, then do you think it's more like your fist is a projectile And then if you do a vertical fist, like you said, it's bone alignment. So therefore, do you think that's more like a spear or a staff? So then this is kind of like the opposite of what Bruce Lee was saying, because Bruce Lee said the karate punch is like a what did he says that's like a staff hitting you,
Hmm.
and then he says a kung fu punch is more like a ball with a chain, and that's coming at you. So I'm saying the opposite here. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think what's the difference?
For me, I find that the vertical, or even slightly turned inward, still pretty vertical, it feels more natural to
Okay.
me. And I feel more comfortable punching harder like that, because you go up to like a brick wall or whatever, you hit it vertically, you feel pretty comfortable hitting it hard. But then when you try horizontal, I don't know, it's just because you're mainly, yeah, that could happen. Um, and I don't know, to me, it hurts me more, maybe just because the force is spread through more knuckles this way as opposed to this way. Um, but I find that every time I horizontal punch and I snap it, a lot of times that happens to me. Like you said, the wrist kind of doesn't stay fixed; it kind of goes that way.
Right.
Whereas I have more success punching vertically.
Mm.
Um, but vertical punching can feel like you're just pushing it instead of just snapping it.
Yes.
So yeah, there is that too.
So I guess
But
that's why I'm saying the vertical punch is actually more like a spear or hitting with a staff, and it's stronger. Like me too. I feel like I could hit the bag a lot harder that way, but then like if I'm snapping out punches, the vertical is more like a whip, and since I'm
mm,
snapping it anyway, the wrist it kind of doesn't matter.
right, right,
I don't. Yeah, I'm snapping it out, so I don't hurt the wrist. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting. I wonder if we'll see any variants in that in the bare knuckle rums.
Somebody said the difference was in the blocking, that
Mm,
with the gloves you have more surface area to that it kind of almost cheating. It's harder for their punch to get through because they're also wearing gloves. You got gloves. It's harder to get through. And I think they were saying that now when you go bare knuckle now, and if you go vertical fist, it could just slip through much easier.
oh, definitely. I mean, you think about this guard. You can already see right there the slit right here. So you just boom,
Right.
put it right down the center.
So
That's gonna go through.
so then you won't be defending like this so much. Now you gotta defend more out. Like
Maybe put up a frame like this.
right, and now you
Frame this way.
yes you need more the forearm shields, and you can't just take it with the cushion right here. So
I think maybe just for like big wide hooks, you'll be able to frame up this way or what have you. Put your
yes,
hands up and brace. But
straight in.
no, yeah, it's gonna be here, here. Like you said, forearm shields.
Yeah. So maybe that's why the old timers had their arms more out here, ready to do the forearm shields. Yeah.
And I remember too hearing it described as fencing with the fists. That's how they thought about it back then.
Ah,
I think maybe they used a lot the lead to kind of defend a lot, and then boom, counter with the rear.
makes sense. Yeah. So that means they fought more long range.
Hmm.
And today's boxing might be a lot closer in you fight in the pocket, right? That's where you want to be. So the range
I,
is different then.
it is, and I just remembered something. I've seen footage of, I believe it was Gentleman Jim Corbett showing some inside fighting, and he was using trapping.
Oh,
I got to find that footage again, but I remember. So it seems to me like when they're on the inside, they try to hook a limb, trap, boom, boom, work the inside uppercuts and hooks. And I remember seeing that. And we're starting to see that now in regular boxing and kickboxing, where people are experimenting. It's harder to do with big gloves, but they're
right.
experimenting with different trapping.
Yes. Do you think they would for today also uh, without the gloves? Then you could do that, but with the gloves and then with the rules of once you clinch, they kind of break you apart. So the the clinch game is real different today from back in the day.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because
It's
I
kind of a
to have your arms like this, I think this kind of helps you with underhooks, right? I mean, you're already ready to, yeah, to grab the guy like that. So I think they had to, right? Because that was legal.
oh, definitely. And
You can kind of
again,
one or two throws, right?
one or two throws, move them around, get a couple uppercuts in. And before it was Marquis of Queensberry rules. I can't say it. They were probably using like low kicks too, maybe stomping on the foot,
Yeah,
scraping the shin, and then getting the uppercuts in. It would have been a brutal fight, nasty fight.
yeah. So, and I heard some of those went on like super long too, because they didn't have rounds, right? Or the rounds were like,
Like a minute.
well, I think maybe the way they saw it was like until someone goes down, the round's not over, or it was something crazy like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There were some tough cats back then, man. Like I want to say there was like one fight that went on in like the hundreds of rounds,
Oh my
like back in the
goodness.
Wild West. 'Cause I think they
My
were just like 1 minute rounds or something.
oh my goodness. Yeah. That
So yeah, pretty brutal, guys.
that is insane.
But but speaking of bare knuckle boxing, it's I've been thinking about this a lot too. The empty hand karate is one of the most popular styles of martial arts worldwide.
Yes.
Um, they say that original Okinawan karate, as it was practiced back in the day, is a lot different to what we know today. Uh, Modern sport style karate and whatnot. Um, One thing that I hear people talk about, and I've had a lot of curiosity about, is bunkai, the applications of katas. And we're starting to see a lot of like uh, reinterpretations of these katas that are maybe more, they seem more grappling based, more infighting, more kind of brutal techniques than like some of the other bunkai we're used to that are more tame. Do you think that that's the original? And it's hard to say for sure, but that's maybe more the original style of karate with those types of applications, or do you think that they might have been borrowed from other systems, or what do you think about that? Like,
My goodness. Dude, honestly, I think you'd have a better answer because when I want to know like the roots of the karate type stuff, I like to start looking into the Chinese martial arts because I feel like that's where the roots are anyway. So when you look at their bunkai and then you look at the karate bunkai, I think it's pretty on par, you know. So I
mm,
think either the Chinese did a great job passing it down to the Japanese, or the Japanese did a great job of learning it from the Chinese. Probably both, you know. And I think if when you see what's going on, like the different types of bunkai, you think it
mm-hmm.
depends more on the individual.
Right, right.
So the
Um,
same technique can be, you know, the meaning for a white belt, and then a meaning for someone that's like more street seasoned, someone that's a little bit tougher, and then the same meaning, same move, but the meaning for the bunkai for a master is going to be different for all three of those, and it works for all three, you know, for them. How about that?
yeah, yeah. That's I agree with that. That's a good way of looking at it. Um, and I think some of the old karate masters have said that there's so many different applications to the katas that it's endless, really. Um, and you're I like the way you put it that everybody's going to kind of put their own spin on it or show it how it makes sense to them. Um, one thing that I think it's probably it's kind of missing from modern day sport karate is the infighting.
Yeah.
I know. I think in competitions they're not even allowed to stay in that. Same with like modern day boxing.
Right.
Um, but when we look at like some of the older Okinawan stuff, like Goju Ryu or Oichi Ryu, we see a lot of infighting, a lot of close quarter fighting. Do you think it would probably be cool for like modern sport karate to kind of include a little bit of infighting and allow it in tournaments? Maybe you think it would make it a little bit more complete?
Yeah, for sure. I think Boss Rutan was hosting a karate tournament like for today, and that one I think allows like some takedowns and throws, which is really cool. But to go to more the extent that you're talking about, where it's like a lot more than that, maybe it has to be like in an MMA format,
Mm,
and
yeah.
we don't see it, right? We don't. Yeah.
Well, even if it just allows for like 5 seconds of inside fighting, right? Because we hear, they talk a lot about the hikite, the pulling hand.
Yeah.
And so in karate, you close the distance, and then if you can grab a limb and use the hikite to score points, you know what I mean, or manipulate the gi around and get them off balance and land like a nice high kick or something. I think that'd be pretty cool. I think that's part of the original art, and
Yeah.
would be nice to see.
Other than like where they do a palm strike and the thumb is like that, so it can go into the eye, or like you were saying the upwards block that goes into the neck or something like that. Obviously can't do stuff like that, right? Because you're gonna
Right,
hurt,
right.
really gonna hurt people. But the techniques should be able to be modified, and you should still be able to do them. Like, why not do this to the chin, right? Or the side of the neck, safe spots like that. But um, I'm thinking a lot of the techniques that we don't see from karate is, to me, is like the wrenching, and
Mm,
I think that is the old school methods that I'd like to see. And I don't know if that would that be legal in the US. I don't think it would be legal. You
no, probably not. Probably too much injury.
And that's, to me that's huge. I feel like that is their big part that we're not seeing. And for me, I didn't necessarily go through the karate route, but I went the FMA route. But I feel like um, karate would be no different. They would be doing wrenching for sure.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, it's always interesting to see, man, like how a martial art changes over the years, how it goes from being a martial art to a sport, and just all the changes it goes through. How there's unfortunately going to be some stuff that gets lost, or maybe not as trained as much, but it's just the historian, the person, the historian in me that I love seeing the old school.
Yeah. The
Uh,
the sport's gonna really emphasize the skill. Like, it's really gonna, because through competition you could really increase the skill, but it's a very specific skill because of the confined rules and everything. So it, like, for with boxers, it's just their hands, right? And the hands become really, really good, but it's not the other stuff. It's not the elbows. It's not the grabbing. It's not the throwing. It's none of that kind of stuff, right? And same with all this. Every sport, it turns into, they're going to be very, very good at that, certain things, but then, like you're saying, the other things, they're not going to have it. They have to throw it out. So
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, I mean, Yeah, that's pretty informative, man. That's pretty good stuff there.
Yeah, yeah, dude, we could keep going and going. So I think for right now, this is a good place to stop it.
Definitely, definitely, man. I hope viewers enjoyed that. I'm curious about the viewers' opinions on these different subjects, what they've experienced, their opinions, what they think about it all, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. So please, just like Mr. Pedro said, feel free to comment below. And thank you all for viewing. And thank you, Mr. Pedro, for stopping by.
Thank you, Mr. Empire.
All right. So, Vampire over and out.